Today we're going to be discussing the solution to Overwatch 2's balance problems. We spoke about it in tank, damage, and support. We spoke about the problems about these three roles, as well as some solutions that could be coming. I thought I'd just do a video where I talk about it all in one big go, including my opinions on the format 5v5 and 6v6. I did a video about it yesterday, but honestly, the conclusion I came up to with a lot of thought is it doesn't matter whether we're in 5v5 or 6v6. If the philosophy of the balance team remains the same, this game will never go anywhere. It literally feels like we are just playing double shield again, and that's simply because like nothing is dying, and it just comes down to a race between two sides on who loses their cooldowns and who loses their resources first, and then that side just blows up and we walk in, we capture point, and then move on, right? So this brings us to the topic of, well, what's causing the state of the game to be like this? Damage across the board is pretty high. Healing across the board is pretty high. We don't need to talk about what got there first, damage or healing. We just know that this is where we are. There's going to be some really controversial takes in here that a lot of people are not going to agree with, but if we want the game to move to a healthier direction, we have to accept some things, some changes are going to have to be done. Otherwise, we will just see power creep over time. And for me personally, I don't want power creep. I would rather that everything gets toned down and we see how things go from there. Now, before I continue, there's always some clever person in the comment that's like, well, you're clearly a DPS player, you're clearly a this player, that player, you're clearly a this hero main. And for that purpose and context, I am a GM player on all three roles. However, I am a Genji main, but for the past 2 seasons, I've exclusively been playing mostly support and ranked because the role is just really powerful. It's more satisfying to play, and it doesn't feel like you're somebody's puppet, and you can actually have an impact in the game depending on the decisions that you make, and the role overall just feels better. Now, with that out of the way, we're going to talk about some of the solutions. Now, for the most part, I think for some of the cases of the heroes in the game, they've done a good job at balancing them or toning them down. Granted that it took them a while to figure it out, but eventually they brought them down into somewhat reasonable states. However, there are some outliers that happened in the current Season 6 balance patch, which was insane to me that these even made it to life. For example, Torbjorn and Bastion, especially Orisa, these three are the ones that, when they got buffed up, was extremely ridiculous because for some strange reason, the balance team of Alec Dawson believed that each hero needs to be at a similar pick rate or a similar win rate. This philosophy, once we start to go on from season to season, we've seen that this is kind of what they want from the game, and in my opinion, this is the wrong way forward. Trying to bring each hero, no matter the role, to be on the same level with their different counterparts, with the different archetypes available in the game, it just doesn't work like that. And one of the hardest pills to swallow for the balance team is that they're going to have to accept that certain heroes cannot be allowed to be made viable because they're either too cheesy for the game or they invoke so much frustration for the amount of effort that has to be put in. For example, let's isolate two DPS characters that are incredibly powerful right now, Bastion and Torbjorn. Alec Dawson in a dev blog already revealed that Bastion has an unmirrored win rate of 55%. And why is that? Well, let's be honest. I don't have to break the game down from a GM or top 500 perspective or even Masters or Diamond. We can just look at Bastion's kit. It is pretty much just, okay, team fight starting. All right, their tanks pushing in. I enter turret mode. I burst them down. We walk in. We win. Bastion is really strong. He also forces the enemy to actually play against him and less of their own game. So unless you're building your team comp and the enemy team is building their team comp to fight against you, one side is going to fall apart. I hope I'm making sense. I tend to do these videos unscripted and go with the flow in my head. So what does that mean? Let's say you're the attacking team, you're playing Bastion. Enemy comes out on Junker Queen, they see that you're playing Bastion, they're forced to go Orisa. Because Orisa's at the moment the only thing that can actually put up a fight against the Bastion in terms of staying alive and applying some pressure, right? Zarya kind of came in through the mid-season patch, but even Zarya, like once, if you are smart with burning her bubbles, Bastion can really just melt her before she can even do anything about it. This also, in a weird way, applies the other way around. For example, the enemy team has come out with Orisa, and you guys have not come out with a character like Bastion or Torbjorn. The entire DPS role that isn't Bastion and Torbjorn feels almost pathetic in that matchup against the Orisa because of how high healing is. Pair that with her Fortify and the overhealth buffs that she's received, that pretty much 90% of the DPS roster feels garbage into her. And because of that frustration in the player that, damn, I don't know what to do. All I have left is Torb and Bastion. they kind of go back, they swap over to Bastion and Torb and come out. And it's like a cycle. Like if you see Bastion Torb, the tank goes Orisa or Zarya. But Zarya is like, I'm gonna put her away from this. She's just kind of like a byproduct of the meta. She's not actually a part of the meta, even though she's a good counter to Orisa. Orisa just comes in because Bastion and Torb are good, and that's the only answer tanks have for those two high DPS characters. At the same time, when Orisa comes in, you're forced to go Bastion Torb. So it's like they're complementing each other that, hey, if this character comes, you go that, or hey, if I'm playing this, you have to go that, or we win. It's caused some unbelievable frustration games in ranked, especially for me. I dropped quite a bit in my rank because especially in the beginning of the season, I couldn't bring myself to play Bastion and Torb because I just don't like their design. I think they're way too easy to execute. I wanted to play a lot of Echo, Genji, Pharah, Hanzo this season. And I paid the price. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be very open with you guys. I paid the price, and each time it wasn't because I was bad at the game. It was just because I wasn't playing the flavor of the month. And I started to feel like more and more of my player agency was being stripped of me because when Overwatch 2 came out, their promise to us was that, well, your hero picks are not going to matter. If that was the case, then why did they start to forcefully buff all these characters and then in that process force you to play these characters, otherwise accept the loss if you didn't mirror what was strong? And this has kind of been the flavor that's been going on. So I was able to understand one thing as I sat down with a couple of my mates, and we discussed a lot of different things. We discussed for hours and hours and hours. We watched a lot of other content creators' opinions. We went back and read through some dev blogs for understanding the developers' philosophies and things like that. And this is my personal conclusion, is after everything we've been through, we've come to the conclusion, and we even went through the forums, the dreaded forums of Overwatch, right? The one conclusion that we've come to is that you cannot allow easy to play characters, and these are very cheesy characters as well, to be dominant, right? Why? Because what they're able to do for the amount of effort that you have to put in, the effort value that you have to put in is low, but the reward value is very high. In a shooter game, that's not good gameplay design. So whether this is Bastion, Torbjorn, Sombra, Mei, Symmetra, and to a certain extent in lower elos, Junkrat, these are characters that are cheesy. Why? Because they promote a cheesy way of playing the game that can be unfun to play against, especially when the character begins to take over. When Junkrat was really powerful a few seasons ago, it was really hard to deal with him because if you just came up to him, or if you tried to contest him, he just one-shot you. And it was weird because we saw a very popular flank Junkrat playstyle going around, at least in Masters and low GM, that's what we were seeing. And then it just kind of became a more like poke version of Junkrat. Sometimes, you had the Junkrat specialists flying all over the map, doing insane things. It was hilarious for the first week. After that, it wasn't so funny anymore. Mei also became really powerful with her slow and things like that. And while she got overshadowed by Bastion and Torb this patch, I think she's incredibly powerful to play because she makes tanks' life a living hell. Sombra is the legit definition of cheese. I'm not going to talk about her from the Overwatch League perspective, even though she's been somewhat hard meta here and there throughout the season or so. What I will talk about is that in your general lobbies, in your quick play lobbies, the stuff that I see on the forums, because I am trying to account for everybody, not just higher levels of play, lower levels of play as well, is that you have these tank players that are basically like, dude, I get hacked and I just can't play the game. She's invisible. I don't know where she is. I'm not like, the top player in the world. I cannot turn around in time and actually deal with her. I don't know what to do. And that's, again, the problem with this situation with characters like these that I've been talking about. They just strip player agency. They tell you that, no, you can't play the game. Okay, you turn the corner as a tank. There's a Bastion in front of you. You're basically being told passively, you can't play the game. You try to contest a Torbjorn, and then he presses E, and he can heal himself. He gets armor. He gets a speed boost. He starts, like, firing away like a machine gun filled with molten lava. And you just, like, on tank, you're watching your HP bar just get deleted. So these are some of the core outliers of characters that are a problem. Mei as well with her wall and her slow. I know the slow is going away and they're kind of taking Mei back to her Season 1, Season 2 state, which we will have a talk about Mei in a different video because I personally think Mei needs to be reworked into a tank. Everybody's been saying this for a while now, but, Blizzard just apparently knows better. Mei is losing her identity because a lot of her kit relies on her ability to freeze and slow things down. However, having that CC on a character like Mei can be too powerful, and we can see it. Usually when Bastion and Torb aren't being played, I am seeing a lot of Mei in quick play, in ranked. Pretty much in all the ranks, people are realizing that, hey, wait a minute, Mei is kind of being slept upon right now. If you're not playing this Torb Bastion garbage, you can run some variation of Zarya Brawl with Mei Reaper or any variation with Zarya, Mei, and it's really strong. But again, people are sleeping on it because Bastion Torb just puts too much pressure towards that comp to force a mirror. In most cases, at least, right? I know it's not always the case, in most cases. So then we come down to characters like Sim as well. Sim is a character that, while I do think she can be cheesy, I'm very soft on her simply because she can only really take over games depending on the map. But when she does take over, it can feel frustrating to deal with her because she has all these like little turrets everywhere. And we are seeing a deployment creep. I don't even know why I'm calling this, but I remember I had a game earlier today when I was playing Winston, and I made a dive and I saw that they had turrets. They had a Sim turret, they had a Torb turret, they had an 𝐒𝐈𝐍𝐿 pylon. They brought in immortality field, and I was like, dude, I am playing the Overwatch 2 PvE. I'm shooting more deployables, more AI objects within this lobby than I actually am interacting with the players. And that's when I started to realize that, okay, I know there's a group of people that like these characters, but when these characters are too strong, where they have things that either play the game for them or basically tell you, no, you don't get to play the game, these characters cannot be allowed to stay strong. We're in a state of the game right now where Tracer, who's always been good, is finally being considered bad. She is finally getting pushed down in people's tier lists and things like that. And that's simply because Tracer gets passively countered by Torbjorn's turret and now 𝐒𝐈𝐍𝐿 turret. And it's incredibly difficult for Tracer to keep up with those two turrets in a match. Like, hey, things aren't working out. Okay, lock Brig, lock 𝐒𝐈𝐍𝐿, lock Torbjorn. You can play these guys horrifically, but if you're playing Brig and you just hold left click in the Tracer's area and you got your two turrets up with 𝐒𝐈𝐍𝐿 and Torbjorn, Tracer can't play the game. Tracer is by far the hardest character to play in this game, and she just gets easily shut down like that. How is that good gameplay design? It's just not. I'm not going to talk about the snipers because that's a different issue that was spoken more about in a format sense. So we're not going to discuss it here. We're going to talk about the sniper problem in another video and how to deal with it. But newsflash, the answer to snipers has always been Genji. So if Genji's bad, snipers will be allowed to play the game. I don't know if anybody's ever discussed this. Whenever the sniper topic comes up, nobody talks about Genji. Genji is designed to be lethal at close range and forces snipers to slow down with the way his deflect and his ability to flank around the map and with just how fast he can be. So if we want snipers to stay away, we want to make sure that dive characters are somewhat the go-to characters. Dive characters tend to be the harder characters to play simply because if you make one small misstep on, let's say, Genji or Tracer, you get blown up. You make a small misstep on Winston or Doomfist or even D.Va and Wrecking Ball, and you just feed and you get blown up, right? So it's incredibly important that we understand that going forward with the balance, we have to draw a baseline of what is healthy and what isn't healthy. In my personal opinion, and you can disagree because I understand everybody has their own opinions, but I'd be more than happy to discuss this in a civil and respectful manner in the comment section, that I think characters like Bastion, Junkrat, Mei, Sombra, Symmetra, Torbjorn should never be allowed to be viable. Now, Sombra is getting a rework simply because the developers have understood that she's too much. She's either too useless in casual play, she's decent in ranked play, and then she's incredibly powerful in coordinated play in Overwatch League and contenders. Therefore, she becomes incredibly difficult to balance, so they have to revisit her whole kit. The same problem applies to Roadhog. He's kind of the same like Sombra, where he's frustrating to play against simply because, again, it just takes away your player agency, right? What do we mean by player agency? Your ability to play the game. He hooks you, he brings you in, he deletes you. What are you supposed to do about that? Now, of course, people can say things like, okay, well, bait the hook, okay, dodge it, this, that, all these things, but it's still unfun to play against because, it's not like that Roadhog player has one vibrating brain cell to just hook somebody, pull them in and kill them. Okay, never mind, they do have one vibrating brain cell to do a combo like that. But that's besides my point. Jokes aside, that's why they guttered Hog and left him to the side, even though 𝐒𝐿𝐄 was the one that was enabling him. And it was through this conclusion that I realized that a lot of the problems that the other characters have faced, like tank and damage in their role, while yes, sometimes there are outliers where a tank was too strong or a DPS here was too strong, like in this season, Bastion and Torbjorn without a doubt are very strong, or in tank, Orisa got a little bit too funny. This was all a byproduct of it had to happen because on the side, support was becoming the strongest role in the game. Healing is really high, and there are too many characters that can do high healing. When Overwatch came out, we had Mercy, Lucio, Zen. I'm not going to talk about support Symmetra. And soon after, we got Ana. Okay? We're going to be quiet about Ana for a moment because I want to talk about design philosophy when it comes to characters like Mercy, Lucio, Zen. Mercy, Lucio, Zen, in my opinion, are the most balanced supports at the moment in Overwatch 2, simply because they're somewhat one-dimensional. Mercy can only do one thing at a time. She can either pocket a teammate from a healing perspective or enable them with damage boost. The rest of her skill expression is in her movement. Zenyatta is a glass cannon type support where he does high damage. He can melt people, or but the trade off for that is his healing. The harmony orb that he throws out is low. It does low healing. Mercy, compared to all the other supports that aren't Lucio and Zen, also does low healing. Lucio is a little bit of everything. He's got a little bit of good damage. He's got a little bit of he's got low AoE healing because AoE healing is very powerful. But his strength again comes in his mobility with how you're able to express your skill with that, the ability to use speed boost effectively, and most importantly, the way you can just play this character effectively. Sorry, I kind of lost my thought for a moment over there. Lucio doesn't necessarily specialize in anything other than enabling rush comps. He's also decent in dive nowadays in the current state of the game. This makes Lucio a jack of all trades and Mercy and Zen somewhat one-dimensional, that they can only do one thing at a time, and they have the risks that this is a risk and this is their reward. Ana was also designed in the same way. She's a single target, high healing character, but the strength of this character actually came in her healing nade. When Ana came out, the nade did 100% healing increase. That was too strong. They toned it down to 50%. Now, the problem with nade was that it started this AoE healing creep. We went into the Moth meta and Mercy became too strong because again, she got Valkyrie, AoE healing. Moira came out, Moira's left click can do AoE healing without a problem. Baptiste came out, again, right click, AoE healing. The problem with these AoE healing characters that came into the game was that we began to saw a healing creep, and not just any type of healing creep, an AoE healing creep. And as a result, now, in the current state of the game, it's become too strong that more often than not, every character can do high healing if their name isn't Lucio, Zen, and Mercy. Illari can do high healing, Ana does high healing, Bab does high healing, Kiriko does high healing, Lifeweaver, Moira, Brigitte, all of them can do high healing and to a certain extent high AoE healing. The problem with this is that you could argue that it's to cover up for the fact that there isn't an off tank, but we were seeing this in Overwatch 1. So is that really the problem? Because this could be the design philosophy from back then that is coming into the game now. Did they really change their design philosophy? In my opinion, they didn't. So what can we tone down from support while not taking away too much of their power so that they're still fun to play and they don't feel like walking free kills? In my personal opinion, we don't need to change too much. If we want to keep the healing high, it's okay. Although in my personal opinion, I want to create drawbacks in supports. For example, if you want to have a DPS like support, the trade-off here is that they will do low healing, again, following Zenyatta's design philosophy. Illari is pretty much, to a certain extent, a better Zenyatta. She has mobility, she can snipe you across the map, she can basically two-tap anybody if you have semi-decent aim. She's got a pretty decently sized projectile hit scan shot. Sorry, the bullet that travels out is shaped like a projectile, that's what I meant. But the bullet size is actually bigger than what the hit scans have in the damage roll, so it's easier to shoot more often in comparison. She has a healing pylon that's basically a third support in the lobby, and her right click does 120 healing per second. Now, what I would like to see is, I would like the healing pylon to be something that helps support her in her job to heal, rather than becoming a third player in the lobby that does her job for her and let her go do whatever she wants. I want Illari to be somewhat like Ana, where the pylon is being used to complement her healing rather than just, okay, I throw it up, I forget about it, now I'm going to go be a DPS on the side. Her damage can stay the same, but the healing on this character needs to go down in the pylon, and more of it needs to be put into her weapon, her right click, so that Illari actually has to make a decision. I think Illari is not that bad compared to some other characters. Moving on to Ana. In the 5v5 setting, not 6v6, in 5v5, Ana's anti-nade ability to shut down healing completely needs to go. I love Ana to death. I have over 1,000 hours on her. But even I understand that it's too strong for 5v5. Especially against certain tanks, they're just useless. If you play into a Junker Queen, a Doomfist, even a Sigma, and even a Reinhardt, and you can just time your nades properly, they can't play the game. They can't do anything. And it's really like, again, we have to view this from an unbiased perspective and think about everybody involved. Something that's a little bit more fair is if Ana could lower the percentage of healing by maybe 50%, 60%, 80%, 90%, and then you kind of work from there and see how it goes. So overall, you do maintain that pressure that, hey, this person, and to compensate, you could either increase the damage just a little bit, or just keep the damage, keep it the same and see how it goes. Again, we have an experimental card where we can try these things to see how it feels in 5v5 and save this game while we are in the state that it is in. Similarly, her sleep dart can remain the same. It's perfectly fine. Honestly, sleep dart's a great ability. It doesn't need to be adjusted. And the adjustment that they brought for the tank roll, where it's only 3 seconds on them, is perfectly fine. Baptiste, on the other hand, Baptiste's immortality field, it needs to become a 95% to 90% damage reduction ability. Again, the concept of immortality is extremely unfun to play against, and it takes away too much of player agency. So while this will still retain some frustration of the player that, oh, I can't kill them fast enough or whatever the case might be, you'll still be able to feel like you're doing something. Granted that some power will be taken away from you, you will still have to destroy the immortality field, like the actual lamp, so you can make the lamp have a little bit more HP so that the ability isn't completely useless, if it turns out to be useless. That's in my opinion the approach for Baptiste, because his right click and shift healing are so high, and although I believe that at the moment that doesn't need to be nerfed, some other parts of his kit can lose some power. Sorry, I'm really sick today, so I'm a bit all over the place if you can't tell. Brigitte, while I think Brigitte can be slightly problematic depending on the meta, I think she's fine as is. The other supports are a bit more of a problem. Rally is fine as well. It's kind of her gimmick, and she's easily countered. Like, she gets run over by Ramatra, Far Mercy comp runs over here, anything where you can just outpace Brigitte, get around her. She's really vulnerable. There's a very low amount of players that can actually play Brig really well, simply because Brig actually needs a lot of skill to execute properly in 5v5. Because she has a very different identity. She's a babysitter-like support in 5v5. Although for some strange reason, 95% of this game's player base continues to play her like a mini Reinhardt and wonder why they're still in Silver 5. Okay, that was just ranting. Moving on. Kiriko. The only change you need to bring in for Kiriko is remove the invulnerability effect from Kiriko's Suzu. You can allow it to do a little bit higher healing than what it does currently to make up for it, and that's it. The invulnerability is garbage for a million reasons, especially for tanks. If a Kiriko Suzu's and the invulnerability comes up, a Doomfist just flies through the enemy team, and now he's in feeding position. Reinhardt is in feeding position, etc., etc. The invulnerability is a big problem. It should cleanse, but it shouldn't turn you invincible for one complete second. The worst part about this is that it helps Kiriko in her duels a lot. Also, can we talk about the fact that Kiriko not only has the second smallest hitbox in the game, she has like 2 to 3 mobility options. She has the teleport to keep her alive. She has wall climb. And then alongside that, she can also use Suzu and rotate these cooldowns fairly effectively if you know what you're doing on Kiriko. So Kiriko's overall survivability is really high. It's really silly, and she can teleport through walls. So the only area that I'm willing to take away power from is the invulnerability. Give her a little bit more healing in that regard, so you can make up for that, and keep the cleanse. The only thing that needs to go, as you can see in my little process over here, is I'm trying to remove the invulnerability interactions in the game, because it's just not fun, and it's especially not fun for tanks because they're the ones that engage and have to disengage. And sometimes if a tank walks in and a Suzu happens, a nade happens, immortality field happens, that tank, even though they might make the perfect play, they pay the price and they just get deleted. If you think that I'm speaking out of my butt, I only have one question for you. Why is tank the least played role right now? Why are people frustrated with tank? I dare you to go play tank for 1 week, and I promise you on your second day, that immediate frustration will kick in that, oh, I made the right play, they did this really easy button press, my whole play got ruined, I died, and now I'm getting flamed. Trust me, it's really bad for tank right now. You think I would be talking about it from a DPS perspective. DPS can outpace these things. While it is annoying and frustrating sometimes, they don't suffer from it that much. Tank is the one where these interactions are really bad, right? Life Weaver. I think some adjustments need to be made to Petal Platform and Life Pull. I think life pull, when you're pulling in a target, should reduce the damage again by 90%. So you can still interact with that person, because obviously if they're out of position, you should be able to punish them. Not have a support just render that punishment completely useless and you guys don't find value. And that person gets to do whatever they want all game, all over again. So it can pull the person, but it should reduce the damage by like 90% or something like that. Or you nerf it slightly to where the distance isn't that high. Secondly, there are some interactions with Lifeweaver's Petal platform that definitely need to change. For example, Lifeweaver can immediately negate the value of an ultimate like Orisa or Zarya's Graviton Surge. All you have to do is just look down, place a Petal platform, pull your team out of it, and the Zarya is just standing there wondering, like, her entire game purpose for the past 3 to 2 minutes has been to build that grav and then make a play with it, and this character just renders it useless with a button press that comes up every few seconds. That's not good gameplay design. Moira can be weird, but Moira's okay simply because she doesn't bring utility and she doesn't bring any BS factor. I'm okay with Moira. Moira's problem is the high AoE healing and the decent sustained damage that she brings in. But here's the thing. She doesn't promote any BS immortality based playstyle. In my opinion, that's fine. Moira can be as she is. She's a good introduction level hero. She can be a little bit annoying sometimes, but she's fine. I think we can leave Moira as is. She's fine. Mercy, Lucio, Zen are fine too. So in the damage category, we already know who we don't want to be viable. That's Bastion, Rat, Mei, Sombra, Sim, and Torb. And then we come over to the tanks. Now, the tanks, I actually think all of them are fine. I think none of the tanks have this problem where they're really overly frustrating to play against, because there's always an answer to a tank. Or if they're playing Reinhardt and you feel frustrated by playing into Rein, lock in Echo or Bastion and burst them down. If they're playing Winston, everybody's favorite Grim Reaper comes out and tears that Winston apart. The list begins to go on, so it's not that hard to answer tanks that are powerful. However, I do think Roadhog in his current state is bad for the game. Developers knew that too. He's been put on the rebuilding block, and we will see what they do with him in the next season, in the mid-season patch, unfortunately, because they're going to first bring Sombra and then bring Roadhog later. Or it's vice versa, I don't know which one. These are just some of my opinions on what I would do to try and fix the state of the balance of Overwatch. I'm not trying to take away high healing, because I understand that damage can get silly. I actually wanted to open up a can of worms where I said that, okay, well, we should actually reduce damage in the tank and support role, because what people don't understand is that the damage role needs to do damage, because that's literally the role. However, if you remove or lower damage on support and tank, you're going to have supports crying that they can duel things again, and tank won't just feel that satisfying because you're not able to kill anything. At the end of the day, it's a shooter game, so we want the shooty part to be fun and rewarding, regardless of the role that you're playing. So I'm fine with keeping high healing to a certain extent within the game, as long as a character can have trade-off, or we reduce the power of some of their more frustrating abilities. For example, Baptiste has high AoE healing, and pair that with the fact that he has a mortality field, that's when it gets frustrating. Kiriko has high healing and just a really powerful Suzu that is on a relatively short cooldown, that again, high AoE healing, but also brings in invulnerability. Again, it just kind of feels like, and she can do really good damage. Both Bap and Kiriko can do really good damage. Eliari can do really good damage. So it just feels like that these characters don't have any trade-offs, right? So we need to create some areas of trade-offs, because trade-offs are there for majority of tank and DPS heroes. That's just my opinion on it. I would really love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions down below. If I by any chance offended you because you thought that, hey, this is my favorite hero and I don't think it should be bad, first of all, don't take it so seriously, because it's a video game. Second of all, I'm trying my level best here to make sure that everybody that plays the game can have a good time, and sometimes there are some characters that just aren't healthy for the game, and even the developers realize this. They pretty much like kind of quietly admitted to being sorry, because next season's balance patch, they basically said that they're just reverting things. They're not even actually going to, like, well, we don't know the full story, but what we do know for the majority of the patch notes, they're reverting Bastion, Torb, Orisa, and Zarya back into their pre-season 6 state. So, and there's only one reason for that, is because it became too frustrating, right? So let's see what happens. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment sections down below. If you like this type of content and you want more Overwatch related content, subscribe to this channel for more. Leave a like, it helps a lot with the algorithm, and I will see you guys in the next video.